The contractions hit like freight trains, one after another, and I gripped the hospital bed rails so hard my knuckles turned white. 21 hours. That's how long I'd been in this sterile room, breathing through pain that felt like my body was being torn apart from the inside. My husband, Garrett, stood beside me, scrolling through his phone, occasionally glancing up when I made a sound he couldn't ignore. "Almost there, sweetheart," he said, without looking up, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate over the past 9 months. The same tone he used when he told me I was overthinking the nursery colors, when he decided we didn't need a doula, when he informed me his mother would be staying with us for the first month after the baby arrived. Another contraction slammed into me, and I bit down on my lip until I tasted copper. The nurse, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, adjusted my IV and squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing amazing, honey. Just a few more pushes and you'll meet your little girl." My little girl. For 9 months, I'd imagined holding her, whispering her name. The name I'd chosen carefully, lovingly. Evelyn Rose. After my grandmother who raised me, who taught me to be strong, who would have been so proud to see this moment. I'd mentioned it to Garrett months ago, and he'd just shrugged, said we'd figure it out later. "One more big push," the doctor called out, and I bore down with everything I had left. The pressure, the burning, the overwhelming need to get her out safely consumed every thought until suddenly, relief. The sweetest cry I'd ever heard filled the room. "She's beautiful," the nurse whispered, and through my tears I saw her. Perfect pink skin, tiny fists waving, dark hair matted against her head. My daughter. My heart exploded with love so fierce it took my breath away. The doctor was cleaning her up when Garrett suddenly straightened, his phone forgotten. "Hand me the birth certificate," he said to the nurse, his voice sharp with authority. "She'll be named after my mother, Dolores Garrett Miller." The words hit me like ice water. "No," I whispered, my voice hoarse from hours of screaming. "Her name is Evelyn Rose." Garrett turned to me, and for a moment, I saw something cold flicker across his face before he laughed. Actually, laughed. "You don't get a say in this, Miriam. You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly." The room fell silent except for my baby's soft cries. Even the doctor paused, looking between Garrett and me with obvious discomfort. But it was the nurse, the one who'd been so kind throughout my labor, who stepped forward. Her face had changed, hardened somehow, and she was staring at Garrett with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sir," she said quietly, "the mother has to sign the birth certificate too. Both parents' signatures are required." Her voice was steady, professional, but there was something underneath it that made my heart skip. Garrett's jaw tightened. "She'll sign whatever I tell her to sign. Won't you, honey?" He turned to me with that smile he used in public, the one that made people think he was charming. "You're just emotional right now. My mother raised 4 children. She deserves this honor." "No." The word came out stronger this time, and I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was holding my daughter, feeling her tiny weight against my chest, or maybe it was the way the nurse was looking at me like she knew something I didn't. "Her name is Evelyn Rose Miller. That's what I'm signing." Garrett's mask slipped completely. His face flushed red, and he leaned over me, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "Don't embarrass me, Miriam. Not here. Not now. You know what happens when you embarrass me." I did know. The silent treatments that lasted for weeks. The way he'd tell people I was having one of my episodes when I disagreed with him. The way he'd slowly isolated me from friends who he said were bad influences. The way he controlled every dollar we spent, every decision we made, every aspect of our lives. But something was different now. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the hormones, or the fierce protective instinct that had awakened the moment I heard my daughter's cry. Whatever it was, I met his eyes and didn't look away. "You don't scare me anymore," I whispered back. That's when the nurse leaned in close to both of us, her voice barely audible. "Should I tell him everything?" she asked me, her eyes never leaving Garrett's face. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. "What? What are you talking about?" The nurse straightened up, her badge catching the fluorescent light. I squinted to read it through my exhaustion. "Linda Chen, RN, labor and delivery." But it was her expression that made my blood run cold. She knew something. Something that had Garrett backing away from my bed like she'd pulled a weapon. "I don't know what game you're playing," Garrett said, his voice shaking slightly. "But this is between my wife and me. You need to mind your own business." "Oh, but it is my business," Linda said, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "You see, Mr. Miller, I've been working labor and delivery for 23 years. I've seen a lot of things, met a lot of people, including your first wife." The words hit the room like a bomb. My heart stopped. First wife? Garrett had told me he'd never been married before, said I was his first love, his only love, the woman who'd finally made him want to settle down. "You're lying," I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, I was watching Garrett's face, the way his eyes darted to the door, the way his hands clenched into fists, the way he couldn't meet my eyes. "Am I?" Linda asked gently. Garrett Miller, married to Patricia Wells Miller from 2015 to 2018. Divorced after she filed a restraining order. I remember because she came through here too. 3 years ago. Had a baby girl. She paused, letting that sink in. Beautiful little thing. Patricia was so scared during labor, kept saying she had to protect her baby from someone. My world tilted. The baby in my arms felt heavier, more precious, more fragile. "You have another daughter?" I asked Garrett, my voice barely audible. "It's complicated," he said quickly, taking a step toward me. "Miriam, you don't understand. Patricia was unstable. She made things up. She what?" Linda interrupted. "She made up the bruises, the hospital visits, the police reports." She turned to me, her eyes full of compassion. "Honey, I kept Patricia's medical records. Standard procedure. But I also kept copies of everything else. The photos, the documentation. Because I knew someday someone else might need them." The room was spinning. My daughter was making soft cooing sounds, and I held her closer, my mind racing. All those times Garrett had isolated me. All those times he'd made me feel crazy for questioning him. All those times he'd controlled every aspect of my life and made me believe it was normal. "You're a liar," Garrett snarled at Linda, but his voice cracked. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can," Linda said, pulling out her phone. "Because guess what? Patricia's restraining order is still active, which means you're not supposed to be within 500 feet of her. But last month you were at Greenfield Elementary, at the school play, sitting 3 rows behind your daughter Emma." The silence that followed was deafening. Even my baby seemed to sense the tension, her tiny fists curling against my chest. I stared at Garrett, searching his face for any sign of denial, any indication that Linda was lying. But all I saw was guilt. Raw, undeniable guilt. "Emma," I whispered, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. "You have a daughter named Emma, and you never told me?" "Miriam, please," Garrett said, his voice breaking. "Let me explain. Patricia poisoned her against me. She turned my own daughter against me with lies. I was just trying to see her, to be part of her life. Any father would, any father would respect a restraining order. Linda interrupted coldly. Any father wouldn't have put his wife in the hospital twice during her pregnancy. My blood turned to ice. Hospital? What hospital visits? Linda's expression softened as she looked at me. Honey, Patricia came to the emergency room at 32 weeks pregnant, claimed she fell down the stairs. Then again, at 36 weeks, said she walked into a door. She paused, her voice dropping. The same door she'd walked into 3 times that year, according to her medical records. The room started spinning again. I thought about all the times I'd accidentally hurt myself during my pregnancy. The time I slipped in the shower after questioning why Garrett's mother needed to stay with us. The time I walked into the kitchen cabinet after suggesting we should get a second opinion about natural childbirth. The time I fell down the porch steps after asking why we couldn't visit my sister anymore. You're making connections that aren't there, Garrett said desperately, but his voice sounded far away. Miriam, you know me. You know I would never hurt you. I love you. The same way you loved Patricia? Linda asked. Because I have photos, Mr. Miller. Photos of what love looked like on Patricia's face, on her arms, on her ribs. I felt something break inside me. Not break apart, break free. Like chains I didn't even know I was wearing suddenly snapped. Show me, I said quietly. Miriam, no. Garrett lunged forward, but Linda stepped between us. Don't you dare come near her, Linda said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I've already called security. They're on their way up. As if summoned by her words, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Large men in Navy uniforms who looked like they could handle anything Garrett might try. Is there a problem here? One of them asked, his eyes fixed on Garrett. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. There's a problem. Ma'am, what's the nature of the problem? The taller security guard asked, his voice professional but kind. I looked at Garrett, who was standing frozen like a deer in headlights, then at Linda, who gave me an encouraging nod, then down at my beautiful daughter who deserved so much better than this. My husband has been lying to me about everything. He has a restraining order against him that he's violated, and I want him removed from this room. Now. Miriam, you're making a huge mistake, Garrett said, his voice taking on that dangerous edge I knew so well. You think these people care about you? You think they'll be there when you need help? When you can't pay the bills? When you're all alone with a screaming baby? But his threats felt hollow now, empty, because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't alone. Linda stepped closer to my bed, her presence solid and reassuring. Sir, we're going to need you to come with us, the security guard said, moving toward Garrett. This is insane, Garrett exploded. That's my wife. That's my daughter. I have rights. Actually, Linda said calmly, pulling out her phone. Let me show you exactly what rights look like. She turned the screen toward me, and I saw a photo that made my stomach lurch. A woman with dark hair like mine, but her face was a map of bruises, purple and yellow marks around her neck, a split lip, a black eye that was swollen completely shut. That's Patricia 3 days before Emma was born, Linda said softly. She told the police she fell down the stairs. Again. I stared at the photo, and it was like looking into a distorted mirror. How many times had I made excuses for mysterious bruises? How many times had I convinced myself that I was just clumsy, just accident-prone? Show him the next one, Linda said, and swiped to another photo. This one showed Patricia in a hospital bed, holding a tiny baby. But her smile was forced, terrified. Her eyes kept darting to something outside the frame. Someone outside the frame. That's enough, Garrett snarled, lunging toward Linda's phone, but the security guards were faster. They grabbed his arms, and suddenly he wasn't the intimidating man who controlled every aspect of my life. He was just a pathetic bully being handled by people stronger than him. "Wait," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone stopped and looked at me. "I want to see the rest." Linda hesitated. "Honey, are you sure? Some of these are pretty hard to look at." "Show me." She swiped to the next photo, and this one made me gasp. It was a close-up of Patricia's wrists, purple with fingerprint bruises. Then another of her back, covered in marks that looked like she'd been grabbed and shaken. Then one of a broken cell phone, smashed to pieces. "He destroyed her phone so she couldn't call for help," Linda explained. "Just like I'm betting he controls yours." My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. Linda was right. My phone. Garrett had insisted we share a phone plan, said it was more economical. But it meant he could see every call I made, every text I sent, every website I visited. He knew my location at all times. He had complete control over who I could contact and when. "That's my phone, too," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. He tracks everything. "Not anymore," Linda said firmly. She turned to the security guards. "Gentlemen, Mr. Miller needs to be escorted from the premises immediately. He's in violation of an existing restraining order, and I have documentation of that violation. I also need you to call the police." "The police?" Garrett's voice cracked. "Miriam, please don't let them do this. Think about our life together. Think about the house, the car payments, everything we've built. You can't just throw it all away because some nurse filled your head with lies." But I wasn't thinking about the house or the car payments. I was thinking about Patricia, alone and terrified in a hospital bed just like this one. I was thinking about little Emma, who had to watch her father be dragged away by police. I was thinking about my daughter, sleeping peacefully in my arms, trusting me to protect her. "Take him away," I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. "I never want to see him again." The security guards moved efficiently, each taking one of Garrett's arms. As they walked him toward the door, he twisted back to look at me, and for a moment, his mask slipped completely. The rage in his eyes was pure, undiluted hatred. Not the face of a man losing the woman he loved, but the face of a man losing his possession. "You'll be back," he snarled. "You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't survive without me. And when you do, I won't be so forgiving." "Sir, that sounds like a threat," one of the guards said sharply. "We'll be sure to include that in our report." After they left, the room felt different, lighter somehow, like a storm had passed. Linda sat down in the chair beside my bed, her phone still in her hand. "How are you feeling?" she asked gently. "Terrified," I admitted. "But also, free? Is that crazy?" "Not crazy at all. That's exactly how Patricia felt when she finally got away from him." Linda paused, studying my face. "Would you like to talk to her? She specifically asked me to give you her number if this day ever came." My breath caught. She knew about me? Honey, women like us always know about each other. We recognize the signs. Patricia's been worried about you for months. She saw the marriage announcement in the newspaper and tried to warn you, but I wouldn't have believed her. I finished. I would have thought she was just a bitter ex-wife. Exactly. But now, Linda smiled. Now you're ready to hear the truth. Linda dialed a number on her personal phone and handed it to me. My hands were shaking as I held it to my ear, listening to it ring once, twice. Hello? The voice was soft, cautious. Patricia? This is... This is Miriam. Miriam Miller. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Oh, honey, I've been waiting for this call for so long. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? The kindness in her voice broke something inside me, and I started crying. Not the quiet tears I'd learned to cry silently so Garrett wouldn't get angry, but real, heavy sobs. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. He controls everything. The bank accounts, the house, the car. I know, Patricia said gently. I know exactly how you feel. But listen to me. You're stronger than you think. You just proved that by standing up to him. That's the hardest part. But what about money? What about a place to live? I have nothing. You have everything that matters. You have your daughter, and you have your freedom. The rest we can figure out. Patricia's voice grew stronger, more determined. First things first. Have you signed the birth certificate yet? I looked at Linda, who was holding the official document. No, not yet. Good. Sign it with whatever name you want. Make it official before he can do anything about it. Then we need to get you connected with a lawyer. I know someone who helped me, and she's amazing. Linda took the birth certificate and a pen and placed them on the rolling table beside my bed. With Patricia still on the phone encouraging me, I carefully wrote Evelyn Rose Miller in clear letters. My daughter's real name, the name I'd chosen with love. It's done, I whispered into the phone. Good girl. Now, Linda probably told you about the restraining order violation. The police are going to want to talk to you, and that's going to help your case tremendously. Garrett won't be able to come near you or the baby. But for how long? What happens when I leave the hospital? You're not going home, Patricia said firmly. Not to that house. There's a women's shelter about 20 minutes from the hospital. Safe haven. I stayed there with Emma for 2 months while I got back on my feet. They have everything you need. Formula, diapers, clothes, legal aid, everything. Linda was nodding encouragingly, writing down information on a piece of paper. Safe haven, an address, a phone number. Patricia, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Because I was you 3 years ago, scared, alone, convinced I couldn't survive without him. And you know what? The first few months were hard, really hard. But Emma and I made it. We're happy now. She goes to a great school. I have a job I love. And we live in a little apartment that's ours. No one controls us. No one hurts us. I could hear the strength in her voice, the genuine happiness. And for the first time in years, I could imagine a future that didn't include fear. There's something else, Patricia continued. Emma's been asking about you and the baby. She's old enough to understand that she has a sister now. When you're ready, when you feel safe, maybe we could meet. The girls could know each other. A sister. My daughter had a sister. The thought filled me with something I hadn't felt in so long, hope. But before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. 2 police officers entered, their expressions serious but kind. Mrs. Miller, I'm Officer Rodriguez, and this is Officer Chen. We understand there's been an incident involving your husband and a violation of an existing restraining order. I handed Linda's phone back to her after saying goodbye to Patricia, who promised to visit me at the shelter in a few days. The officers pulled up chairs beside my bed, and I found myself telling them everything about the lies, the control, the accidents during my pregnancy, about how Garrett had isolated me from everyone I cared about how he'd made me believe I was crazy, worthless, nothing without him. Mrs. Miller, Officer Rodriguez said gently when I finished. Based on what you've told us and the documentation Nurse Chen has provided, we have enough to arrest your husband for violating his restraining order. But I want you to know that you have options for additional protection. What kind of options? You can file for your own restraining order. Given his history and the threats he made today, I believe a judge would grant it immediately. It would prevent him from coming near you or the baby, and it would prevent him from contacting you in any way. Officer Chen leaned forward. We've also spoken with Safe Haven. They're prepared to send someone to escort you from the hospital when you're discharged. You won't have to go home and risk encountering him. The relief was overwhelming. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had allies. Real people who believed me, who wanted to help me, who weren't going to abandon me the moment things got difficult. There's one more thing, Officer Rodriguez said. Your husband was arrested in the hospital parking lot. He was waiting by what I assume is your car, and he had a suitcase with him. We found some interesting items inside. My blood ran cold. What kind of items? Plane tickets. 2 tickets to Mexico, departing tomorrow morning, along with a fake birth certificate for the baby with the name Dolores Miller, and what appears to be forged custody documents. The room started spinning. He was going to take her? It looks that way. If you hadn't stood up to him today, if you'd signed that birth certificate with his mother's name. Officer Chen shook her head. Let's just say we're very glad Nurse Chen was here. Linda squeezed my hand. He's not taking anyone anywhere ever again. 24 hours later, I was sitting in a small but clean room at Safe Haven, nursing Evelyn Rose while watching the sunrise through the window. My daughter, my perfectly named, perfectly safe daughter, was sleeping peacefully in my arms. No one was going to hurt her. No one was going to control her. No one was going to make her feel small or worthless or afraid. 3 days later, there was a soft knock on my door at Safe Haven. I opened it to find a woman with kind eyes and a little girl with dark curls who looked exactly like Evelyn Rose would in a few years. Hi, Patricia said simply. I'm so glad to finally meet you in person. Emma peeked around her mother's legs, clutching a small wrapped gift. Is that my sister? She whispered. Her eyes wide with wonder as she looked at Evelyn Rose sleeping in my arms. This is Evelyn Rose, I said, kneeling down to Emma's level. And yes, she's your sister. Emma's face lit up with the purest joy I'd ever seen. Can I hold her? I promise I'll be careful. We settled on the small couch in my room, Emma cradling Evelyn Rose like she was made of glass while Patricia and I watched. The resemblance between the girls was striking. The same dark hair, the same delicate features, the same peaceful expression when they slept. She's so tiny, Emma breathed. Mom, she has my nose. Patricia laughed, and the sound was so free, so genuinely happy, that it filled me with hope. This was what life could look like. This was what freedom sounded like. Emma's been practicing, Patricia told me. She's been reading books about being a big sister, haven't you, sweetheart? Emma nodded seriously. I know how to change diapers, and how to make bottles, and how to burp babies, and I saved up my allowance to buy her this. She handed me the wrapped gift, a soft pink blanket with Evelyn Rose, embroidered in delicate script. I had it made special, Emma said proudly, so she'll always know her real name. I started crying then, but they were good tears. Healing tears. Thank you, Emma. She's going to treasure this forever. As we sat there, the 3 generations of women who had survived Garrett Miller, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not just the absence of fear, but actual, genuine peace. The lawyer says his case is going well. Patricia told me quietly, while Emma was distracted with the baby. The kidnapping charges, the forged documents, violating the restraining order, he's looking at serious prison time. And the judge granted your restraining order immediately. He can't come near you or Evelyn Rose for at least 5 years. 5 years, I repeated, letting that sink in. Evelyn Rose will be starting school by then. And you'll be ready for whatever comes next. We both will be. This community here, these women, they become family. Real family. The kind that supports you instead of controlling you. Looking at Emma, gently stroking Evelyn Rose's tiny hand, watching my daughter respond to her big sister's voice, I realized that Garrett had been wrong about everything. I wasn't weak. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't nothing without him. I was everything Garrett said I wasn't. I was strong. I was capable. I was worthy of love and respect. And most importantly, I was the mother my daughter deserved. 6 months later, I was standing in the doorway of my own apartment, a small 2-bedroom place that Emma had helped me decorate. Patricia and I had become real sisters, not just women connected by shared trauma, but genuine family. Our daughters were growing up together, and watching Emma read stories to Evelyn Rose was one of my greatest joys. I had a job now, working as a receptionist at the legal aid clinic that had helped me get my restraining order. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every paycheck had my name on it. Every decision about how to spend it was mine to make. When Evelyn Rose needed formula or diapers, I bought them with money I had earned. When she outgrew her clothes, I picked out new ones because I wanted to, not because someone else decided what she should wear. The best part was that Linda had become like a grandmother to both girls. She visited every Sunday, bringing homemade cookies and stories about her own grandchildren. She'd been promoted to head nurse after the hospital recognized her for preventing what could have been an international kidnapping case. Garrett's conviction had made headlines, and Linda was being honored for her vigilance in protecting vulnerable families. Garrett himself was serving 7 years in federal prison for attempted kidnapping, fraud, and violating his restraining order. 7 years, during which my daughters would grow up safe, free from his influence, surrounded by people who truly loved them. But the most beautiful thing was watching Evelyn Rose grow. At 6 months old, she was laughing, reaching for toys, responding to her name. Her real name, the one I had chosen with love. When Emma would lean over her crib and whisper, "Hi, Evelyn Rose," my daughter would light up with the biggest smile. She knew she was loved. She knew she was safe. She knew her name. Sometimes I thought about that moment in the hospital when everything changed. The moment when I finally said no. When I finally stood up. When I finally chose my daughter over my fear. If Linda hadn't been there, if she hadn't recognized the signs, if she hadn't been brave enough to speak up, I don't want to think about where we might be now. Instead, we're here. Free. Happy. Building a life filled with genuine love, respect, and choice. Evelyn Rose will grow up knowing that her voice matters, that her decisions are her own, that no one has the right to control or hurt her. She'll grow up with Emma as her big sister, Patricia as her aunt, and Linda as her honorary grandmother. She'll grow up surrounded by strong women who chose courage over comfort, truth over convenience. And me? I'm not the same broken woman who walked into that hospital 21 hours of labor ago. I'm Miriam, mother, survivor, fighter. The woman who said no when it mattered most. Now tell me, what would you do if you were in my place? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and comment where you're watching from.